Hey there, friend. Welcome to the Having a Mom Moment podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Warner. This podcast is all about taking a few moments for yourself and reconnecting to the amazing woman behind the title of mom. You have so many plates spinning at any given time between your kids, your partner, your job, maintaining your household, etc., etc. But where does taking time just for you play into that? Let's spend some time together, you and me, right now. We're going to connect, tune in, and tap into what makes us the incredible woman that we are. We'll nurture ourselves so that we can pour into those who can count on us. We'll also hear from other moms to learn about the ways in which they've tapped into alignment in their own motherhood journeys. Let's roll. We're having a mom moment. Hello, my friends. Welcome to this week's episode of the Having a Mom Moment podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Warner, and I'm excited to share this week's episode featuring Amanda Torres. Amanda is a mom, stepmom, newly empty nester, and a grandma. She came on to share her motherhood journey and her message to inspire moms as a motivational speaker. And while she did do that, the conversation also flowed into how tapping has helped her navigate the loss of her father. This opened up a whole other conversation about navigating grief and motherhood, a topic which has been on my heart to share recently. So I'm so thankful that it came to the surface today. I always love to see how these conversations I have with women flow organically and see how they unfold. And today's turned into the most beautiful gift. Even if grief isn't part of your story, there's good stuff in here for any mom. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of the Having a Mom Moment podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, I would love to. So I am a motivational speaker. I also have my own podcast, and I am a mom to 4 bonus kids, 2 kids that I gave birth to, and I'm a grandma to 2 granddaughters.
Aww.
So it's been amazing having granddaughters after raising 2 of my own boys, and then acquiring girls on top of that has been really fun. So, but I'm a motivational speaker at heart because I started doing that because I went on a journey myself of trying to get outside of my role of just being a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up in a small town and everybody knew my dad. And so I always introduced myself as John Hauser's daughter, Amanda. And then I married a man who's everybody knew his family. So then I became Dan's wife, Amanda. And then Nick and Nate's mom, Amanda. And it wasn't until my granddaughter was born to my first son that I stepped back and I'm like, holy cow, like I've always introduced my role or my title first and never my name. And not that all of those things aren't important, but like none of those would be unless I was first, right? And so I really like had my first taste of trying to figure out what it looked like just beyond being a mom. Not that it's not the most amazing gift, right? But like all of my kids are adults now and they're all doing the things that I raised them to do. And so that first kind of hit of what's my purpose came when my youngest went to kindergarten. And I was a stay-at-home mom, and you can only organize the spices so many different times. So I got into direct at Mary Kay because I feel like the gateway drug into all of direct sales and network marketing. And so I wanted community and I wanted to figure out what my purpose looked like. And I had worked in corporate America. I had also been a preschool teacher. So I had background in different things, but none of that was something that I saw myself going back to. My husband at the time hauled cars over the road, so he was gone. So I was really the front and center parent for my stepson and my 2 boys. And I started to develop this love of motivating moms to think outside of the box a little bit, to create something in pockets of their day that inspired them, because it gets I love being a mom. It is what I was made to do in this planet. But when you are just getting up to fill lunch accounts and make sure that kids are to school on time, you lose yourself. And so I started my podcast called Becoming Amanda because it was really this journey. It was stepping into this journey of like, okay, the kids are grown. Now what? Like, where am I now? And it took me 2 years of trying to get outside of anxiety, get outside of depression, and realize that, I have a purpose in being here. My kids are doing amazing, and I don't
Mhm.
have to be the hover mom anymore. And so that's what I really love teaching women, is how to see their value outside of those roles and those titles, because you're a mom forever, but nobody tells you how to be a mom to an adult.
Mm.
It's not, when our kids are born, we've got all the books, right? Like what to expect when you're expecting, what to expect the first years or whatever. Nobody hands you that book and says, here, this is how you're a mom to an adult. And these are the years where it's like you're in this mental battle, because you
Oh,
don't want them to fall, and yet you still need to create your own life, and you still need to let them, live it. It's a really hard transition. And so I hope to teach moms through my experience, and to help make that transition just a little bit easier for themselves and for their kids. So that's kind of my little background as to how I got going in all of this, and decided, hey, like, I love public speaking. Let's go do this. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I love that. I love that. And just being able to shine the light of possibility for other women. And it's interesting that you experienced it first when your kids started school. And
Yes.
then now you're saying you're kind of experiencing it again now that your kids are adult children. But I think a lot of moms experience it at some point in the journey. And
Mhm.
I think sometimes we feel like we just have to like surrender and be like, that's it. I'm just a mom now. And there's
Right.
so much more to who you are, which is literally the premise of this whole podcast. Is just like, you are so much more. Like, that is one piece of you and it is so important, but you're
Mhm.
so much beyond that.
Yes. I believe we all have a reason why we're here.
Yes.
And if we are blessed enough to have children, that's one part of our story. And it's a beautiful part, but realizing after, 18 years, and the nest is what it is, and the birdie's gonna fly, it's like, wait a minute, like, I lost myself somewhere in there. And so it can be a really fun transition, but it's a season of unknowing, and
Mhm.
working through that is not always, um some people are like, yes, like, I'm going to go travel, I'm going to do all the things. And my husband and I were excited. In fact, my youngest stepdaughter graduated in June, and we drove away from graduation. It's like, we've been talking about this for years. Like,
Oh,
this is crazy. Like, we're done, so to speak.
yeah.
um but yeah, no, it's just, when my last graduated, it was like, I got married that year, and he was going to college, and my oldest son was getting engaged, and he had his daughter, and all of our, my husband's kids were doing their things, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, I thought I had this figured out. So it's encouraging to talk to other women who are like, oh, I had a plan, and then that plan changed. And it's okay
Yeah.
to change. And it's okay to pivot when it doesn't feel right or isn't aligned anymore. So, yeah,
Hmm. Can
super fun
we
transition.
can we please talk about that? Because I think
Yeah.
it is so important in so many different categories of life, whether it be your career or what you had envisioned for yourself or your family or whatever, and
Hmm.
just the beauty in the pivot.
Yes.
Yeah, what do you
It,
think?
I, so going from corporate America, I made a huge jump to being a preschool teacher. And everybody's like, what are you doing that for? And at first I'm just like, holy cow, like, I want free daycare for my kids. Like, my whole paycheck was going towards these
Amen.
kids, right? So I made that jump. And then when I made the jump to being a stay-at-home mom, I eventually, like, I was an entrepreneur for so many years. And it wasn't until, like, well, 3 years ago, I went back into the working force at my granddaughter's daycare in the office part, to help out a friend. And so all these jumps, I looked at it, and in one sense, because, like, I've owned a coffee shop, and I mean, I've done a lot of things,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so all of these things, when you step back and you look at them, and you can really pull from those experiences, like, each experience has brought me to where I am right now. Now, does being a motivational speaker and, being out there in this fashion, like, is that going to be the rest of my life? I don't know. But, like, I know all of those experiences have brought me to where I am right now. I would not have developed my love for public speaking if it wasn't for, stepping into being a stay-at-home mom and then stepping into owning my own business and trying to help women see that they could have value outside of just being a mom or a wife.
Yes.
And so I think that even if you're in a season, and I did an episode on this a couple months ago on a season of unknowing, give yourself some grace, because it's in that time where you maybe don't have an idea. Maybe your career is just going along and you feel like you're being called to do something different, but you have no idea what that is. I sat in that state for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to give yourself some grace. I think society says you need to always be pushing for the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah.
And we get so wrapped up in what that feels like that we're not stepping back. And then we're rushing into things that maybe don't feel completely aligned with who we are or what our purpose is. And so, in that season of unknowing, as scary as it might be, take that time to journal, take that time for self care. If you are an empty nester, by all means, start doing and exploring. Maybe grab a hobby or get out there and experience things with friends that you've not experienced before. In that state, you'll find what it is that your heart is calling you to do. If you're a mom who's currently raising children, make sure that you've got a support system in place, whatever that looks like, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes, to just be able to sit by yourself and say, it's okay. Like, where I'm at is okay. And I also can change where I'm at.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. Like, I think we get into this spin cycle where we're constantly trying to make everybody happy. And we forget to ask ourselves, like, what is it that would make us happy? And I'm fortunate enough to have the most amazing support system that, it's taken a little bit getting this business going, and my husband and my kids and even my ex-husband, like, we're all one big happy family. And everybody's like, yes, like, this is what you were meant to do. Like, this is, so a cheering squad of some sort, whether it's online or in person, just having that voice where it's like, hey, like, this is okay. And cutting yourself that grace, because we were not meant to just do one thing. Like,
Right.
I truly believe we were meant to do something, but, like, it doesn't always have to. We go through different seasons in our life, and it's important to recognize that and go with it. I mean, it's the more in flow that you are, the more you can open yourself to the possibility of having whatever it is that's aligned with you land in your lap. Literally land in your lap.
Yes. 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 This is so right on. And I love this because I just had a very similar conversation with a lovely woman named Nina, who will come out. Her episode will come out a week or so after yours, but exactly. And, we sign up for, a lot of us go to college, you pick a major, you just aspire to said major and career path. And then you start climbing the ladder, whatever it is. And then sometimes you look back and you go, my ladder's leaning against the wrong building. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And you just, like you said, you're in the spin cycle, and we not never, but we often do not take the time to pause. And it's okay to go, do I want this?
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay if you don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's huge. This is something that is really resonating with me lately. Was laid off earlier this year for a job I worked at for a long time, which was a huge blessing in disguise. But now I'm kind of settling into, like, what's next for me. And I was always the go-getter, climbing the ladder. And how you said you ended up at your daughter's preschool, and people are going, what are you doing? And you're like, this is what makes sense for me right now. Right. And you're not losing, you're not going backwards. You're just doing what is the best fit for you at that time. And you can pivot forward and whatever. And I think just being able, especially as a working mom, to pause and go, what is going to best serve myself and our family's interests at that time? And if it doesn't follow the path I had in mind, that's okay too.
Yeah. 100%. It's funny because I have the quote that comes to mind is, other people's opinion are none of your business. Because I have switched, I mean, I switched, I love network marketing, even if it's a launch pad into somebody finding out that they love to be an entrepreneur. And so I've switched businesses and things, and there's always been that thing of like, okay, so what are people going to think now? But it's important to note, like, if they're not writing the checks for your bills,
They don't get
it's
a say.
not their concern, you know?
Yep.
And so it's I've done everything. Like, I'm 43 years old and I feel like I've done a lot of different things, and each one of those things has played a part in who I am. And even if it's for a short time to be like, yep, I tried that. I'm good. Like, I don't have to try
Yeah.
that again,
Right.
and it just, I know at this point in my life, like, I was telling my husband the other night, I said, I've been done at my job since April, and I have settled back into that entrepreneurial role where I'm unemployable. So I know that a job is not what Amanda needs right now. So
Right.
this season of life is all about what is making me happy. And I I don't know if you've followed Jenna Kutcher at all, but she
Yes.
talks about
Love
how
her.
I love her. I want to be her when I grow up. So when I've looked at a couple of her different things, and one of the things that really stood out to me is that if it's not creating a yes energy in me, then I'm not going to do it. And sometimes I'm going to try the stuff, right? And sometimes people are going to judge. Like, I literally just stepped out in a very big way and signed up to be in this contest, if you will, to be a speaker at an event in northern Wisconsin next year, and had no clue that the video that I was making was going to be blasted out for everybody to vote on.
Oh.
No clue how any of that worked. And there was that part of me where it was like, oh, am I good enough? Is my worth enough? And I think
Mm.
as moms, our worth is tied up in our kids and our husbands and our home life and cooking meals. And for me, it was running to football games. My worth was all tied up in that. So when that video came out, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I had no clue everybody was going to be voting on
Oh
this.
my gosh.
But then to step back and think, no, like, this is who I am. And anybody who wants to lay in judgment on that, that's on them and a reflection of who they are, not a reflection of who I am. And so I didn't win. I made it to the top 5, but
Wow.
it was amazing. It was an amazing experience because you've got your core people that are like rooting you on, but when you see so many people coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, I voted over and over and
Yeah.
over again, like, it was just pretty amazing. But you have to step back and think, okay, like, these kids are not going to be young forever. My worth is not that, and I'm allowed to choose and do whatever I want to do. I've got one son that's an entrepreneur and opened up his own store, and one son that went to college, is going to college to be an engineer and wants to be on racing teams, around the nation. So it's like, do what you need to do to fill your soul. Like,
Yes.
nobody else can answer that question for you.
What would you say? What's the first step? If you're like, I don't know what the thing is. I know what I'm doing isn't it, but what's the thing? What's next?
So I've gone through that transition a few times. And so just recently, I took stock of all the things in my life that I could get lost in
Mm.
and do all day and not get paid for it. So I started writing those things down, and journaling for me is a huge outlet. And I can look back and see what season of life I was in when I was journaling that, and tell where some of those things started to come together in my journaling. So journaling has been a huge outlet for me. So I encourage anybody to just sit with themselves for a little bit and take stock of what they could just lose themselves in, and start journaling about it. What parts of those things do you love? And I think that we get so stressed out about trying to find the answer
Yeah.
that we don't allow it to just naturally show up. So really just step back and know that you don't have to have an answer right now.
Right.
It's okay to not have an answer. It's okay to not have an answer for a long time. Like, I wanted to quit my job, but I had no idea what I was going to do. No clue. And it wasn't until I just released that needing, desperation, like, having to know. And I'm a huge proponent of manifesting and all of that. It like,
Yes.
when you let go of needing to know the answer and how it's going to come out for you, all of a sudden it just magically falls into your lap. And it fell into my lap in the way of a coaching program. I know how to be a public speaker. I didn't know the business of public speaking. And it came to me on a Thursday night. It was storming. I got onto a phone call, and the next thing I know, I'm making plans for all of this to unfold. But I had to step back and just be like, okay, I'm going to just listen. I love to pray. So, just asking for those answers. And it came out in journaling that this is what I really love. Like, this is what I've loved to do for a very long time, is motivate women. And so I think that's the biggest part, is just maybe go organize some spices if you need to again. Just something to keep your mind off of it.
Yes.
Step back and just release that desperate needing to know what the answer is. And of course, meditation is always a big thing for me, putting my feet in the grass and just listening quietly for answers. And they're going to show up to you in crazy places you wouldn't even expect. Like, how I jumped onto this career path was so not anything like I thought it was going to be. So yeah, just release that is like probably my first biggest step. You don't have to know an answer right now. And everybody is always preaching to us, life is short, life is short. Yes, it is. But you also need to enjoy it for what it is at the moment too.
So much of what you said, one, resonates. I'm right there with you. Two, I'm so glad you're saying it, because I say it. I know some people are like, okay, woo woo to Shannon, but it's like, no, look, it's,
Yes.
tap into it. It works. It's so beautiful. And I think a huge part is you've got to make yourself the space to even explore, and for me in my life right now, that means I have to get up like an hour earlier than I would like to have that time for myself in the morning. Would I rather sleep sometimes? Absolutely. But that's what I need in this season. So juicy. Yeah. And unhooking from like you said, because I know for myself, sometimes the energy just straight up felt desperate. Like, I need to get out of this job. I'm unfulfilled. I'm unhappy. I know I'm not tapping into my talents and my gifts here, and just anything, I will take anything, and it's like, that's not how it works. And when I finally released and I was like, I will be leaving this job. I don't know how. I know that this is the end of this chapter. I'm not kidding you. I hope this doesn't come back and bite me if anyone that I used to work with listens to this, but it was a Thursday morning, and I wrote down that morning, I was like, I promised to myself that I will leave this job by my birthday in June. And this was in February. I got laid off that day. That afternoon, I got the phone call, and it was just because I had just
manifesting.
I had just decided, and I get goosebumps still, because I'm just like, I cannot believe that it happened that way. And everything, I mean, was it nice having a reliable income? Yeah, but everything's been okay. It's like, oof.
It provides, and whatever that it looks like for whoever's listening, when you make a decision and you just release the outcome of what that looks like, it will provide. And like for us, yes, my paycheck was amazing. Have I made much money since I've quit my job? No. But it's almost like once you've made that decision, your energy settles down. And I use, I don't know if you've heard of EFT or tapping, but I also use that to just kind of calm the energy and release from it. Because even with paying bills, it just, you can get so wound up in okay, where's this next thing coming from? And it's amazing. My husband and I have always been amazed, when we're in that whole thing, on a smaller level, other than just trying to find your life purpose. It's oh, the money just shows up. I mean, it's there once you just settle the energy down, and it happens fast. So fast.
And stop worrying about the how. I can't see any way where the money will come in. I don't have anything to sell. I don't have anything to monetize. It will show up. It will show up. Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk about tapping? I'm familiar, but I am by no means an expert, and I think it's a great tool.
Absolutely. So I actually came upon tapping 10 years ago. My dad was 55, and he suddenly died of a heart attack. And he was my rock. And he was the glue that helped me stay together. My parents are divorced, both remarried. We've got a lot of personality in my family. And so my dad was kind of my sounding board. And then one day he wasn't. And so all of my family, because my dad was, he was the dad every girl wished she had. Like, he was truly amazing. And everybody in my family went on some sort of antidepressants. And I had been on antidepressants and anxiety medication prior to his passing. And I knew that that wasn't a route I wanted to go. So I was looking for a more holistic way of handling the grief process. And so I learned about tapping, and it's what helped me get through and learn to accept where we were. I use tapping all of the time. I use tapping. I think it is truly my first granddaughter was born at 24 weeks, and she
Oh,
was in NICU for 103 days. She was born at a
wow.
pound 3 ounces. And
Wow.
I did surrogate tapping for her. I've taught my niece how to get over and disconnect from bullying, the PTSD from being bullied, with tapping. Like, it has been such an amazing gift in my life. And what tapping is, and you can look up the pressure points online, and I can get those to you also, but we're really tapping on the energy points in our body. And so our bodies trap emotions. And when we trap those emotions and they stay trapped and we don't process through them, we are creating a weakness in our body that allows that part of our body to be injured. So whether it shows up as disease, or you fall and you roll your ankle, like, every part of our body has a connection to some sort of emotional state. And so when we are using tapping, we are helping clear those energies out of our system so that we can allow it to flow more. So in the case of dealing with grief, grief is resides in our lungs. And so I remember in the few weeks after my dad's passing, I would wake up and felt like I just couldn't breathe. And I would be like, I didn't know how I would take the next breath. I was crying so hard. And even when I wasn't crying, like, it just felt heavy. And it's interesting because I had used tapping through that and processed through it. And then this last 2 years, I've had the chest pressure again. And I'm like, what is going on? And so I was tapping and I was using, muscle testing to go through different things. And in this really kind of great but messy transition of marrying my husband, moving out of the house I had raised my kids in, my son getting married, all of the things happening, um, it didn't hit me actually until probably about a month ago. And we drove by the old house, and it was me and my husband, and I burst into tears. And he's like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, the unprocessed grief right now that I'm feeling in my chest is all about how my life used to look like, right? Like, I raised my kids by myself. My ex-husband and I have an amazing relationship, but my life looks nothing like it had the past 25 years, 24. And so it was that unprocessed grief that was weighing heavy in my chest.
Mm.
So I did tapping. And so when you start out on the side of your hand, and do a setup statement. So it's incredible. This setup statement is that no matter what is happening in your life right now, you deeply love and accept who you are right now.
Hmm.
And that is such a powerful statement, because, again, getting back to, like, all of the things that we're told we should be and whatever, and we don't feel like we're measuring up, where we are right now is okay. And so when you just start out by saying, like, even though I'm feeling all of this grief, I deeply love and accept myself. And you can say some version of that 3 times, and then start through your tapping points. And so when we start through the tapping points, we acknowledge the bad first. And a lot of people, if they haven't done study into that, are thinking, like, no, 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 like, I know we're not supposed to say the bad stuff, right? That'll just come running back into my life and manifest again. But we can't go into a room and clean it blindfolded.
Mm.
So we have to go in and we have to acknowledge the crappy stuff first, give it a voice. And so the best way that I can tell somebody who's new to tapping how to do it is just pretend like you're hopping on the phone with your best friend, and you're going to tell her all of the story, right? And so you're going to start out on the eyebrow point, and very gently you're going to tap, and you're going to say, "Hey, like, I'm really feeling this grief really strong." And then you're going to move to the next point. "I don't know why I'm feeling this, because I'm so happy in my current life, but I do miss parts of my old life." And you just keep tapping through the points. And pretty soon you're going to start to feel like a weight has lifted, literally like a weight has lifted. And I always encourage people that I work with to, and this was the tapping solution is where I really found it with Nick Ortner. And so I always
Mm,
encourage people that I work with to scale it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most uncomfortable feeling ever, and one being like, I'm okay. And so after a few rounds of tapping, when you think back to that feeling of missing my life in this example, if it's gone down, you know that the tapping is working.
mm-hmm.
And the really crazy part about tapping is you actually don't have to believe that it's working. It just does.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of modalities, like there's a level of believability that needs to happen, right? Tapping is not one of those things. You can be the biggest skeptic and do tapping and it will work. And so it's not that it changes the memories, it just changes your emotional response to the memory. And so when you can sit there and say, I loved springtime in my old house, like the backyard was coming alive and I can talk to it without this lump in my throat, I know the energy's processing. And so after I feel like I'm down to a level where I've accepted, if I've tapped myself down to a 2 or a 5 or whatever I feel comfortable with, I can then start tapping in the positive. So I am safe in this new life. This new life is what is meant for me. I am aligned for this new life. I get to create new memories in this new life. And so you're tapping in the positive then right behind clearing out that negative. And so that's what your body will then remember. But tapping has been an amazing gift for me. Like I know even in the middle of the night, I would wake up in such anxiety attacks. Like I felt like after my dad died of heart related issues, I had this dark cloud come over our life. And so I've been to the emergency room thinking I'm having a heart attack and it's just
Mm,
anxiety.
yeah.
And so in the middle of the night, I would wake up and I would just start tapping. And I wouldn't even say anything other than, I feel so anxious. I feel so anxious. And you can just repeat over and over and over until finally, like my heart rate calmed. I started feeling like I could breathe a normal breath again and then tap in. I am safe. I know I am safe. And it's amazing. And we can do it for free. Like
Yeah.
we don't have to pay anybody to like tap with us. I do enjoy working with people because I can kind of push them a little past their boundaries. Our brains are designed to keep us safe. And so
Right.
if we are pushing ourselves, we won't push ourselves as far as maybe we need to. And so the gentle nudging, I have worked with people that um, needed that extra help. I'm a certified practitioner with tapping. So I was able to kind of nudge people past where they were comfortable and make some real progress. So it's an amazing gift.
Well, speaking of amazing gift, circling back just a little bit, I also lost my dad I think it's about 19 months ago now. So what
Oh
you're
my
saying
gosh.
really hits home. I mean, same kind of, I also had the best dad. And he was older than your dad, but 67, so still really young. And
Wow.
I never, I had my close girlfriends called him dad. It was a
Yeah.
profound loss. And he was definitely my sounding board and my grounding force.
Mhm.
Anyway, I never thought about using tapping in my grief. And I know I'm over like the first major, hump because it has been some time, but it still comes up, and I
They
never,
say that year 2 is actually the hardest
oh,
because year 1, you're just trying to make it through the milestones, right? You're
yeah,
trying to get past the first holidays, the first birthdays, the first anniversary. And year 2 is when it's like, okay, all that's done. And so
yeah,
now I need to like figure out what this looks like. And it's a sucky new normal. I am so sorry
yeah,
that you have to experience that. It's not a fun club to be a part of.
no,
But truly tapping is just it was my saving grace, my absolute saving grace through all of it. And to be able to help my family with that was I can't describe it. Like there are no words. So try tapping.
yeah, I will.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're
So good.
right too about the second year, because the first year, I feel like you're just waiting to exhale the whole time. You're
Yes.
just trying to survive. And then it almost feels like for me, I was like, okay, I survived a whole year. Like, I think I'm going to
Mhm.
be okay. But then it kind of sunk in. It's like, no, no, this is just life now. Like, this is just
Yeah.
how it is. And that's like a
Yeah.
whole other layer of like, ugh,
Yeah.
here it is.
I had my father passed away in January, and I had a Reiki session with a friend of mine on the 10-year anniversary of his passing. And he said, I want you to visualize going and picking him up and having a conversation with him. And I'm going to try to get through this without crying.
Oh
But
my gosh, I'm already.
um our our place, like, he grew up going there, and then he, took us kids going there. It was over on the Mississippi River in Prairie du Chien, and it's like the place I feel connected to him the most. And every year my husband and I go over, he lets me go sit by the river. I do my thing, cry my tears, and then, like, I'm good, right? Never good, but just sustainable.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
during this Reiki session, he's like, I want you to visualize going to pick your dad up and going to your favorite place and just telling him about all the last 10 years. So much life has happened in the last 10 years, like a whole lifetime. And it was the first time that I had experienced that and felt that hug again and felt that
Oh,
peace of just being able to, like, unload on him. And
yeah.
is he here in the physical? No, but it was just that connection piece that was so beautiful, and it was so amazing. And to just be able to be like, hey, all of this stuff has happened, and I just need you to sit with me in it. And so, anybody that's experiencing grief like that, just imagine taking him to your guys' favorite spot,
Mm.
whatever that looks like,
Yeah.
and sharing with them all the things. It was a really beautiful way to honor him that day. And I felt really good. Like, it felt really good
Yeah.
after I was done with that session. So, and then I did tapping because I needed
Yeah.
to
Oh,
get through all
well,
of that stuff. So,
I didn't know I needed my waterproof mascara today, but no, thank you. But I mean, even just, thinking about it, and it is,
yeah,
I can see where it would be very healing, but right
yeah.
now I'm sure I would just bawl my eyes out for,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cause I
Give
feel
it a
like
few
he's
years.
watching, but
Yeah.
like I had a baby less than 3 weeks after he passed, you know what I mean? So like so much has happened, so much has
Yeah.
happened. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
a lot.
And there's signs that he's there, show up, and it
Yeah.
just is an amazing, beautiful gift when it does.
Yeah.
I love it.
Wow. I did not expect this to go this way, but can we talk a little bit? This was something I'd had on my heart to talk like on a solo episode about navigating grief and motherhood. And I know we could probably
Mhm.
talk for an hour, and I know we don't have an hour, but
Yeah.
some of the highlights of what maybe you've done to help navigate as a
Yeah.
mom.
It's when you are experiencing grief as a mom, it's so, you're not just experiencing it for yourself, because you're also trying to help your kids. My oldest was 13 at the time, and Nate and my dad were like the best of buds. And everybody says, like, he is the walking, talking carbon copy of my father.
Oh,
And so when you're trying to make yourself okay, and you're also trying to explain it and make it okay for your kids when you don't even know how to make it okay for yourself, there is no, you just fumble your way through it. Literally fumble your way through it. And there were days where it was like, I just wanted to stay in bed because I didn't feel like I could get up and do it again. And you just force yourself to keep going through the motions. And so all I did was just kept getting up and doing the things that felt normal. I made lunches for my kids. I made sure they were going to school on time, getting on the bus, and homework was done, and football season. And in January in Wisconsin, there's like nothing to do.
right.
That can, you
Yeah.
can't, I'm not an outdoor winter girl. Um, and so we really had to kind of figure out what that looked like. And so to me, it was just all about trying to do the things that felt normal. Like, My oldest was in basketball. And so we, go to basketball games and we do those kinds of things. And so before you know it, like you do have those conversations where it's like, okay, let's talk about it. And my oldest never wanted to talk about it. My youngest always wanted to talk about it.
Mm.
And so it was very interesting seeing how both of their process was different. And even now, my oldest still doesn't want to talk about it. And my youngest does. And it's been 10 years. And so for me, it was just literally all of that. It was finding what was normal and to keep doing that. I went off the deep end and decided, because I owned my own marketing agency and worked from home, and I decided I couldn't keep doing that. So I opened a coffee shop because that's what any sane person would do, is dive into a coffee shop. And so I just like, I decided to immerse myself in something to keep my brain busy. And it was crazy because the day that we closed the coffee shop, I cried as hard as the day I found out that my dad died.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that's the grief that's been waiting to come up. Like that's where all those tears have been. I've been so busy being busy, trying not to think about it, that, well, now I have to. And
Yeah.
so navigating grief as a mom is probably one of the hardest things, because it's not just about you, and you have to keep going because these babies need you. And it was a really sticky couple of years for us, trying to figure out what this new normal looked like. And I mean, my kids were so close to my dad. Like they
Yeah.
just, my dad and my stepmom, and my stepmom and my stepsister and I are still all very close. Um, but yeah, no, it's a tough situation. I mean, you become a person that starts going through the motions very quickly because you don't know what else to do, like to make
Yeah.
anything okay. And you want to keep it as normal for your kids as you can. So, um, no, it's just, I don't recommend it.
Right.
I This is a 0 out of 10 experience.
Agree. Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and you'll eventually settle into, and my kids got to the point where they understood and didn't ask questions when I would just burst out crying.
Mm.
And they were, a little older, but a song would come on, or, whatever, that would remind me of my dad. And I would just start crying. I mean, it hits you out of nowhere, and it hits you out of nowhere forever. Like, I don't feel like it ever goes away. Those moments become a little fewer and far between. But my kids were like, okay, like mom's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'll be okay. But we really had to come together as a family to deal with it, because I I had to help them and myself, and I felt like a lot of it I was doing on my own. My ex-husband is not the most like nurturing person. So when I was
Hmm.
going through it with the boys, like it was the three of us, and it was not easy at all. But everything you can do to keep your life as normal as possible. And it's you're gonna feel that guilt, because it's like, well, wait a minute. I remember sitting at a restaurant bar situation, and we were listening to a band, and there was a group of us, and I just got so angry, because it's like, how are these older people out there jamming out, dancing around on the dance floor, and my dad can't?
Yeah.
And he was fine the day before, and
Oh my
now he's
gosh.
not. And so the anger part, I think, is something that it consumed me for a very long time. Um, but I had to, like, I had to feel those feelings, and I had to move through them.
Yeah.
But I don't even know where I was going with this, but it just, I don't know. It's not fun.
I
Not fun.
know. I know. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that, especially
Yeah.
throwing the curveball at you, because I've been trying to
No,
figure out how to
absolutely.
articulate it myself. And it's like,
Yeah.
there's no way to paint this in a
Mm-mm.
beautiful light. Like it's just,
No.
I guess if you have the belief that there's somewhere else, somewhere better, like that's helpful,
Yeah.
but you still want them here. So you're still
Yeah.
trying to navigate that. So,
And it changes how you deal with other people going
yeah.
through it. So, like, I show up to a funeral and I'm sorry, they're in a better place. None of those things, are comforting anymore. It
No,
it doesn't it changes who you are on a
I agree.
cellular level. It changes who you are. And you just learn to accept that this is what life is now. You never get over it. But it like, even I had a good friend of mine who just lost her father, and he was older, he was very sick and whatever, and we know that it was a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But it like, you become this person of like, nothing I'm going to say is going to make this better for you. I'm just going to hug you. Let me
Yeah.
know how you want me to support you. Because there was no amount of muffins, there were no amount of
Right.
meals, there were no amount of I'm sorry's that made it any better for me. And I would get angry because it's like, no, I'm selfish. Like, I want to hear. Like, Steel Magnolias rolled through my head a lot of times. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but when she lost Shelby, it was like, no, like, she needs to be here, right?
Oh,
So, yeah, it changes who you are, and it changes how you deal with other people going through the same thing. I mean, death is not something we should ever have to experience, especially with people who we grow up thinking are going to be here forever,
yeah.
forever.
Yeah. Oh,
So, or
yeah.
at least until they're very, very old.
Right. Right. My dad was always the big tough guy. So,
Yes.
it wasn't super quick, but it was still a surprise. And it was just
Yeah.
like, this throws
Yeah.
everything, that you
Yeah.
knew to be true. I know it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. 0 out of 10. Zero. Do not
Yep.
recommend.
Yep. And it doesn't matter if it's fast or you've had a chance to say goodbye. It all just, for a lack of better terms, sucks.
Sucks. 100%. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I totally
Mm-hmm.
agree. Yeah. I appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing that. I know it's not easy.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I don't ever think there's a coincidence with the people you end up having conversation with. So I
I agree.
appreciate you sharing that gift with me, because I will definitely start integrating tapping
Yes.
in
Yes.
my healing. Yeah.
It's a journey.
So it is absolutely. Um, you've had multiple roles, you've gone through some major things amidst all of it. And I know when you're in the thick of grieving, you're just surviving. But in the grand scheme of things, how do you reconnect to yourself and motherhood?
I don't know that I honestly really have. No, how I've reconnected with my motherhood is those moments when all of my kids are here, the ones I gave birth to and didn't. And I'm listening to all of them laugh or tell stories or help each other through things. And I know that I've done everything I can to make them the best adults that they can be. And it's funny because my husband and I were talking the other day. We were just recanting because of the hurricanes coming to Florida. When
Mm,
Ian hit, my oldest stepdaughter was down there in a camper.
wow.
And through that time, we also had something going on with my son, and then his son had some life things happening. And I said to him, like, do we ever stop worrying? Like, we're still parents, it still looks different, and we've got a lot of, I mean, all of our kids are in their 20s, and there's, aside from my youngest stepdaughter, but um everybody's got personalities and lives, and it just, I sit with those moments when life is crazy and I feel like it's spiraling and overwhelmed, and I look at the faces of each one of those and their partners and now my granddaughters, and think, dang, like, they're all here because we're here.
No.
And we are fortunate enough to have really amazing relationships with our exes. Um, my stepdaughter, my ex came to her graduation, and she's like, when I try to explain to people who Dan is, she's like, I don't know, he's just Dan. Like,
Yeah.
it's my stepbrother's dad. It's my stepmom's ex-husband. Like,
Right.
but it's just, when you sit there in those moments and it's like, oh, like, this is what it's all about. And I had those even growing up, when they were growing up and things were crazy because he was over the road. Um, And I was able to be the one that was hearing all of the laughing and hearing all of the, the fun stories from school and things. It's those moments where it's like, oh yeah, this is what it's all about. Like this makes things okay. And I'm going to be all right. Like even through the hard stuff, it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love that. That's such a beautiful answer. Yeah. Look
yeah,
what we created here. I love that. That's
yeah,
a great
yeah.
answer.
Our
Aw.
dream is to have that space where everybody can just be and come and spend together, and it's just an open door. I mean, every one of our kids has a someone other except for one of them, and so yeah, it's fun. It keeps us young.
Yeah, I love
For sure.
that. There is
So
more. Yeah, I'm sure it just shifts when you're in the quote
yes,
unquote empty nest, and that sounds like
yeah,
a fun phase as well.
yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
love
funny. I
that.
was at my granddaughter's muffins thing at the end of last school year, and one of the teachers was lamenting about an issue that her kids were having. And I had just got off the phone with both of my boys, who one had one thing going on and the other one had the other thing going on. And it was clashing because my one son owns his own business and the other one helps out when he needs to. And it was just a mess. And I'm like, you want these problems, the adult problems, they're not so fun to deal with. You
Oh,
want a missing cleat or whatever. Like those are the problems that are the easiest to deal with right now. So
yeah,
yeah, you're always a mom. It just looks different. And
yeah.
it's fun when they come back and say, hey, I need you for this, or can you help me with this? Because it's like they're never too far away. So
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I know every phase is not easier per se, just
yeah.
different, and you
Yep.
grow through them together.
Totally.
Oh, you've shared a lot of wisdom, but if you had one piece of advice to give to a mom in any phase of life, what would it be?
Introduce yourself first.
Mm,
That's it. Introduce yourself first. When you claim who you are first, the rest of it is going to fall into place. Like it is probably one of my biggest shifts that ever happened was, hi, I'm Amanda first. I'm Amanda, Nate's mom. I'm Amanda, Elisa's grandma. Like that shift in my whole mindset, just, it was amazing. It was an amazing thing to realize, like, oh, yeah, I am me first.
yeah,
I am me first. So
I
introduce
love
yourself
that.
first. You don't get lost in who you are then, and it remains forefront in your mind, even though the busyness of being a mom is there. It You are you first. And it's a good reminder every day, or when you go to introduce yourself, that, oh yeah, like I am me first. Like take care of you first. I mean, the old saying goes, you can't fill it from an empty cup, but and I totally just botched that, but you have to fill your cup first. You have to be
Yeah.
you first. And so pour from an empty cup, that's what it is. Um but yeah, no, fill you first, and
Yeah.
then the rest will fall into place, and you'll be way happier, and your
Hmm.
kids will love you for being way
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And it's not taking away from your kids to take care of yourself
happy.
first. Yeah, they'll be
Yes,
better for
yes,
it. That's
yes.
beautiful. I love it. So, where can people find you? How can they work with you?
Sure. So my podcast is on all the things, Spotify, Apple, all of that. It's Becoming Amanda podcast. I am on social media as Becoming Amanda, Instagram and Facebook. You can hit me up there. I am actually just releasing, I have a TikTok called Becoming Amanda podcast, but I am creating a new one, and it is called I Am Amanda First. And so
Oh,
I'm going to be doing some things on there, but I have a course that's going to be releasing soon, that I'll post on all the social media stuff and in my podcast, on how to deal with being an empty nester and figuring out what your purpose is. So, yeah, just hit me up on the socials, all over the place. I'm there.
I love it. Yeah, we'll put all those links in the show notes as well so everyone can
Sounds
find
great.
you.
Sounds
Awesome.
great.
This was so good. Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
love just seeing where things flow, and thank you. This was very healing for me. I
Good. I'm
appreciate
glad.
the tangent. So thanks so much for sharing your
Yes.
wisdom today, and this has been a lot of fun.
This has been. I truly appreciate being on.
Thank you again, Amanda, for joining us today and sharing your wisdom. Here are this week's key takeaways. 1, we are so much more than just moms. We often lose ourselves in the minutiae of the day-to-day of child rearing. When your kids leave the nest, it creates a whole new season of unknowing. 2, it's okay if your plans change. Pivoting is okay when things don't pan out or don't align anymore. Look back at all experiences and identify what you can pull from each of them and how they got you to where you are now. 3, it's okay to take the time to pause and reflect. Do I want this? Is this what I want for myself and for my family right now? And if that leads you away from your planned path, that's okay. 4, in seasons of unknowing, give yourself some grace if you don't know what your next step is. Step back. Don't feel the pressure to rush into the next thing. Remind yourself, this is where I am, and that's okay. 5, other people's opinions are none of your business. Do what you need to fill your soul. If they're not paying your bills, they don't get a say. 6, when you make a decision and release the outcome, it will provide. Just make the decision. 7, in navigating grief as a mother, do the things that feel normal. You do what you have to do because you have to keep going. Your kids need you, and sometimes that just means going through the motions. Do everything you can to keep your life as normal as possible. And 8, introduce yourself first. Claim who you are first. You are you first. Fill your cup first, and the rest will fall into place. All of Amanda's details, along with resources for EFT tapping, are available in the show notes. I've created a couple of new ways to work with me to gain some extra support in maternity leave planning, but first, have you grabbed my free maternity leave planning guide? It includes 18 pages of tips and tools to create an aligned path that honors your needs from workload transition to building and support with a new baby and honoring your need for self-care. You can grab it at the link in the show notes. I've also opened up my waitlist for Mastering Maternity Leave, a 6-week live program where we create an aligned leave plan that honors your needs at work, at home with baby, and for the transition back to work. We meet twice a week with plenty of opportunity to talk and connect with other women in a similar phase of life. The waitlist for the next round is available in the show notes. I'm also rolling out one-to-one individualized maternity leave planning. If you are looking for individualized attention to work through all the details specific to your situation, the one-to-one maternity leave guidance will be available so soon. For more information, you can drop your details at the link in the show notes, and you'll be first to know when the program goes live. Until we meet again, come hang out with me on socials at Having a Mom Moment on Instagram and also over on Facebook. And as this podcast is just for us moms and moms-to-be, drop me a DM or email at havingamommoment@gmail.com if there's something you'd like to hear about on a future episode. And if you're enjoying what I'm doing and putting out over here on the podcast, please leave a review. It would mean so much. If no one has told you today, you are amazing, you are loved, and I am so proud of the beautiful human that you are. Have a great day.